Hello and welcome to the Metaverse Insiders interview series. My name is Josh, and in today's episode we interviewed Sandy Carter, the COO and Head of Business Development at Unstoppable Domains. Sandy is responsible for overseeing the day-to-day operations of the company and driving strategic partnerships and growth opportunities. In this interview, we discuss the importance of digital identity in this new world of technology. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Sandy.
It is my pleasure, Josh, to be on with the #1 rated Metaverse news on Google. That's pretty darn cool. How could I say no to that?
Absolutely. We appreciate that. Well, we're going to have a lot to talk about today, so I'm excited to see where it all goes. So, to kick off our conversation, could you please provide us with a brief introduction to yourself and what it is that you do at Unstoppable Domains?
Yeah, so my name is Sandy Carter, and I'm the COO and Head of BizDev for Unstoppable Domains. So that role means that I cover communications and business development and marketing and legal, basically all I would say the go-to-market functions of the company. And Unstoppable, if you don't know, hopefully you do, but if you don't know, it is a digital identity platform. And digital identity is very different than Web 2. In Web 2, your digital identity is tied to your platform that you're logging into or getting access to. But in Web 3, that digital identity travels with you, which means you own the digital identity and you own your data associated with it.
Lovely. That's really interesting stuff. It's nice to see a company dedicate itself to actual identity, because this is a major obstacle for people to get over, especially with the transition from Web 2 credentials over to Web 3. Very different entities in their own right.
Absolutely. And it's so critical, Josh, for the metaverse too, especially with the changes that I've been seeing in the metaverse where, people had been focusing on the metaverse, on the technology, right? What Google Glasses were you going to wear? Like those were like all the hot topics. But now people are recentering around people, like where it should be, like people are the center of the metaverse. And if you put people at the center of the metaverse, the first thing you have to work on is your digital identity. And how that associates with your avatar. So I think it's so relevant to folks who listen to and read your material because of that linkage into the metaverse. It's just such a crucial first step.
Absolutely. Well, could you walk us through how you're looking to achieve this, or how you were in the process of achieving this in the first place, please?
Yeah. So if you think about digital identity really represents your metaverse brand across all metaverses. And so what you're looking at is setting up almost like a brand profile for yourself or for your company inside of that digital identity. So it consists of a domain, typically that is your identifier, like sandy.nft or sandy.polygon, for example. And that identifier then is linked into your crypto wallet so that you can transact with it. In fact, Josh, I was just at in Vegas and I was able to go into a store who accepted crypto, a real life store who accepted crypto, and I used my sandy.nft to buy something as an experiment, of course. But it was really cool that they were enabling me to use my digital identity that I use in the metaverse to purchase something in real life. And then that identifier also has linked to it your avatar. And I think this is really important, especially for the metaverse, because as you're linking that avatar in, for example, mine is a Ready Player Me avatar. And so now when I sign in with my digital identity, sandy.nft, it pulls that avatar with me. Now, before, the trends we had been seeing is that people wanted to switch up that avatar for each of the metaverses that they were playing in. But now people are viewing that avatar as part of their identity, part of their brand. And so what we're seeing now is that people want to have the same avatar, maybe dressed differently, maybe with different wearables or different skins, but basically the same avatar that comes with them. So now that digital identity pulls in the avatar. So for me, for example, anybody who has a Ready Player Me metaverse can pull in that avatar. And then the other pieces of your digital identity are things like different tokens that identify you. A token is just a digital asset. So different digital assets that identify you. So for example, I have DressX, which is a wearable only in the metaverse. And I have that in my profile. I have a Nori badge that shows people that I care about the environment because it's made everything I do carbon neutral. I have tickets that I showcase as well. So I went to Decentraland's fashion show. I have a digital ticket for that, like a ticket that's an NFT, so I can showcase that. And so it now allows me to kind of build my identity, and my identity kind of pops through with what I have in there. In fact, yesterday I was chatting with a gentleman on a panel, and he was saying that he always struggled with how to identify himself. And he feels like his true, authentic self pops through in the metaverse because he uses that unstoppable digital identity. And so he actually doesn't have to think about his brand. His brand just shines through with his communities, with his websites, with his tokens or digital assets, with even his avatar. That just all shines through naturally. And so in his words, it was his true, authentic brand that popped through that digital identity. And I love that. I thought that's really interesting. You're not making it up. It's coming through your interests versus you kind of stating what your interests are.
Interesting. I like how your focus is so oriented around actual digital identity, because I saw a stat recently or a poll, something along those lines, on social media. And it's about people in Generation Z nowadays actually value their digital identity more than their interpersonal physical identity. And to me, that's quite mind-blowing, but I guess it's the direction that we're heading in anyway. So it's good to see you guys actually making this process more streamlined, and making it very possible for people to actually have a prolific digital identity.
If I thought about the quote that you just gave yesterday, I was at an event, and we're here in Los Angeles today. And so there's lots of fashion designers. And the really interesting thing to me was that as I was meeting fashion designers, they said, I designed for the metaverse. I design fashion in the metaverse. And so I was talking with a couple of them who had been around for a while. And they said, right now, it's more valuable on your resume to say that you design fashion in the metaverse than you design fashion in real life. Isn't that mind-blowing? Like you would think the resume would be reversed, right? Well, I designed for, this fashion show, the Paris fashion show, or what, but no, now it's almost flipped, especially with the new designers. They want to design in the metaverse first. And I met one designer who said that he had always designed his fashion digitally, like he kind of does digital painting to come up with his creations, and then he would make it in real life. And now he said he's so excited because those digital creations, he had been saving them. He's now turning those into NFTs and wearables for the metaverse. So kind of interesting the way the world is turning right now, right? It's kind of a whole new mindset that we have going on.
Without a doubt. I mean, I guess we could see it coming to a certain degree. It's very fascinating to see how digital lives are effectively taken over from our physical lives. It's interesting that as well, accessibility and safeguarding our digital identities is almost more of a challenge than the physical identity realm. So, to elaborate on that slightly, could you please talk to me about what Unstoppable Domain is doing in respect to maintaining that control and personal identity that people want to have in the new digital worlds and digital lives that we are now adopting?
Yeah, this is really important to us. It really goes to our DNA and what we want to focus in on. We want to make sure that people own their own data. So if you think about back to that, digital identity, that profile that you have, one of the magical pieces of it is that now when you use your digital identity to sign in, you get to decide through a choice what information you share, when you share it, how much you share it, for how long you share that data as well. And so that puts the burden on you as the user, but it also gives you a freeing power that now you know that only data that you have approved can be used by a particular application, for example. It helps you to keep more of your safeguards on it. So, for example, at one show, I bought a cool t-shirt to wear while I was on stage. And of course, once I bought the t-shirt, they had my email. And I must have received, I think it was 2 weeks before the conference, I probably received 70 plus emails from them trying to upsell me, cross-sell me, resell me more goods like that. And I was thinking, had that been a Web3 app, I could have opted out of my having my email shared or any, all the preferences about me shared as well. So if you look today at a digital profile, you get to decide, do I want to share my email? Do I want to share my location? Do I want to share what pieces of who I am with that particular company? And for me, that is so very important. It enables me to protect the data more, enables me to secure the data in a more powerful way as well.
That's very good to hear. So, as you said, it's very much a problem nowadays. With Web 2 having a lack of monetization, people have been able to acquire free access to personal data without you really knowing. So, this whole shenanigan, it's been a bit of an interesting one these past few years. People have really started to click on to what cookies actually mean. So, it's quite interesting to say that nowadays, especially with what you guys are doing, you can control that and really decide on what you want to share and how that can benefit you in its own way.
Yeah, and I think it is really, really powerful. I just have so many stories of where, I talked about something. One of the stories I tell is my husband and I were going to go to a Texas party. We lived in Texas for a long time. So in the car, we were chatting about, should we wear our hat? Should we wear our boots? What should we wear? How far do we want to go to Texas? And we got into our house and immediately we had ads popping up for Stetson hats and Roper boots. So that they were monetizing it almost instantly from my voice, from talking and discussing it, not even from me searching on it. And, we kind of laugh about it, but it really is serious, especially when you start talking about your health or other things that are so crucial to you. It's so important that you, as the owner of that data, because the data makes up who you are, right? You are your data. I think it's just an essential human right for us to own that data and for us to own that digital identity.
Well, there's an absolute necessity for it nowadays. I've never really agreed with data sharing. I've always been against Facebook policies and all of the small print sneakily incorporated into our online accounts. You just don't see it coming. But this is why I have a lot of faith in the new Web3 way of doing things, and hopefully that will knock the nail on the head and sort it all out. So, in regards to helping people port from Web 2 to Web 3, is there any incentive that unstoppable domains have in order to draw Web 2 users over to a Web 3 user base?
Well, I think we have a couple of things that makes it easier for Web 2 users to leverage unstoppable domains in Web 3. So, everybody encourages people to start with your digital identity and start with that branding. So as you come in, if you want to decide on what your digital identity should it be my name or should it be, pink because I wear pink all the time? We have a way that you can search on our search bar now using artificial intelligence, so ChatGPT, that you can search and come up with the right digital identity that you want to use. In addition, when you purchase it, and I heard this yesterday, we had tons of Web 2 companies that were at this conference I was at, and they were saying, oh, I don't own any crypto. So how do I buy it? Like if I don't own crypto, can I buy it? And yes, you can actually buy your digital identity with a credit card or PayPal, like all the normal ways. So we make it really easy for you. You don't have to have a crypto wallet right away. We will hold the solution for you and not make you go through all the keys and the wallets and everything as well. So we make it really easy for you to kind of take that first step into this Web3 world. And then if you're a company as well, we have been working with lots of Web 2 companies, just talking to them about what they need to think through, how they need to approach it, even sharing some best practice case studies with them and on how Web 2 companies are approaching and starting and, what they're looking at and what they're doing. So, we know that for mass adoption of Web 3, we need more people to come over, and that means it needs to be as easy as possible.
Well, speaking of helping this happen, are there any talks of investments or partners that you're working with to help this process run more smoothly?
So we just partnered with Polygon, so that now if you wanted to be part of the community of Polygon, which we have tons of Web3 companies, but more importantly, more Web2 companies now have gone with a Polygon solution. And so, as they come over, being part of that Polygon club can really help and assert them as well. We also have created, Josh, a lot of educational material as well to onboard different people into the space. So for example, just on training on what is a domain, how do you use a domain? We believe that utility is greater than hype. We have a video on utility is greater than hype, so it can show you all the use cases. Like once you have this thing, what can you do with it? And then I also started a group called Unstoppable Women of Web3 in the Metaverse. And that's really important to me too, to have more diverse voices here. We have a whole set of education streams that are available through Unstoppable Women of Web3. So you'll see, things like a stream on Web3, on blockchain, coming soon on the Metaverse. We're almost done with the Metaverse one. We have them in Spanish. We're doing translation into French. And so again, we're really doing our best to try to onboard more and more people, making it really easy to understand what these concepts are, because I think it's so essential that they do understand them.
Absolutely. Education is definitely the key in this area. I think there are a lot of, well, not grey areas per se, but just people trying to understand the concepts of what we're dealing with here. So I think from the perspective of wallet infrastructure, even the way of understanding how monetization actually works, it can be quite daunting and, to be frank, quite scary. I can understand why an average user may be worried about this. So it's very good to see that you guys are very clear on your objectives in terms of wanting to educate the people on how this actually works. And of course, for all the right reasons.
Yeah, I do think that, even our terminology, right, Josh? We say things, it takes you a while just to do the translation. And I don't know why. I don't know why we did that. Like NFT, non-fungible token. Like, could you get any more techie and hard than that? We were chatting about this yesterday. We're like, why didn't we just call it a digital asset or a digital collectible? It would have been so much easier. So I think over time, a lot of these gorpy words that we have will go away, and we'll move into, everything will be mainstream. In fact, we may not even talk about Web3 anymore, right? We may just talk about what we're doing on the new immersive internet, which will obviously have in it embedded the metaverse. So who knows how long we'll be talking about these individual things, or it just becomes a way of life for all of us, right?
Oh, absolutely. I reckon that the way that we talk about Web3 now is just a means to make it an easy way for us to differentiate what we're looking for as opposed to what we currently have. Because I must say, before I got into this business, I never really spoke about the internet as Web2, It's just the internet. And I'm sure once this all develops on the other end of things, once again, it's just going to be called the internet. Just a new evolved version of what we currently have.
Completely. I completely agree with that. Yeah. So it is, it is funny. Like we were envisioning yesterday, we did this workshop and we were envisioning where will we be in 5 years? And that was one of the things we said, well, just talk about the internet. It might be the immersive internet, or it may just be the internet. Who knows? It may just be our way of life if we start doing things there. William Shatner spoke here at this conference yesterday, and he was talking about his days as Captain Kirk in Star Trek and where he beamed in or teleported. And he compared the metaverse to that. He goes, I can do what I did in Star Trek now in the metaverse. I can teleport to Mars. I can teleport to London. I don't even have to leave my house. I can go all these different places just like I could on Star Trek. So I thought that was funny.
For sure.
Yeah, right. Funny and true at the same time.
100%. It's just quite bizarre to see pop culture find its way into reality to a certain degree. But in all fairness, though, everything starts off as sci-fi.
It does. It
Yeah.
does. Yeah. Yeah. It's really, it was fascinating because we had, of course, because we're here in Los Angeles right now, we had lots of examples of that where things showed up in film or TV that are now coming true in the metaverse and even Web3, right? Like your digital identity. They were showing a couple of episodes of like Batman and Star Wars and Star Trek, where your digital identity travels with you, and it is kind of like your avatar. It's really fascinating. I mean, movies and TV shows from 1989, like that's a long time ago, that had some of these concepts in it. So it is interesting how science fiction, soon becomes reality.
It is, but it's a very exciting thing, I must say. I mean, the day that lightsabers become real, wow.
I'm going to be there if I can get a lightsaber, man. That would be awesome.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Well, if that were to be in the metaverse or in real life, I would most definitely be happy.
Me too.
Yeah. So, speaking of looking at what the industry will look like in the next 5 years, what can we actually expect from unstoppable domains in the next 5 years?
So I think you're going to see, this digital identity platform develop out. So first, I think what's stored in your digital identity will change over the next 5 years. So for example, and some of this will be sooner than 5 years, but we're already looking at, land, deeds for land being stored there, whether it's deeds for metaverse land or buildings in the metaverse or in real life. We just saw the California DMV. They're looking at putting car titles and creating those as an NFT, which I think is really interesting, like having all your deeds and your titles and everything stored in that digital identity. I had met with a group of healthcare startups in New York. And then again, when I was in Austin, I met with a group of healthcare startups there as well. And they still have this vision of getting your healthcare data stored inside that digital identity. Now, of course, there are HIPAA rules and everything, but we're thinking 5 years out because they told me, oh, and I met with a neurosurgeon, and he said the number one reason that doctors misdiagnose things is that they don't get like your end-to-end records, right? Typically, you don't send like your allergist or your dental records or how your eyes are doing, but all of these things play into your diagnosis. And part of the reason we don't get all of them, or a doctor doesn't get all of them, is they're all siloed, right? You have to call like 15 different places to get all those records. Well, what if that was stored inside of your digital identity? And if that was stored inside of your digital identity, imagine the power of that, that you could share it with anybody that you needed to. For example, I actually just had an accident down in Brazil, and it took hours to get any of my medical records shipped down. And of course, I was not in any shape to get them sent down. So imagine if I'd had that on my digital identity. The other thing that I can see going in your digital identity are things like education. So I was talking to LinkedIn, and they were telling me that about 40% of people who list a school on LinkedIn didn't go to that school. That's crazy, right? But imagine if a school issued you a diploma as an NFT. So now it's on chain, so it's immutable, it's not changeable. And now you could prove that you went to that school. So maybe you couldn't enter, I went to Harvard on my LinkedIn profile unless I actually had verification that I went to Harvard. I think there's so many changes that will occur over the next 5 years. And if you look in 10, I even think we will have things like data appliances that will sit in your home so that you can manage your own data. So, I was talking to my grandmother, and she said, when I was growing up, Sandy, I didn't even think that everybody would have a refrigerator in their house, of an appliance that could cool something. That was like, whoa. And so today people are like, oh, I'll never have a data appliance in my house. But yeah, I think you would. I think you're going to have a data appliance in your house. I think it's going to be super easy for you to use it and leverage it and work with it. And anyway, these are some of the things I see 5 and 10 years out. More data in your digital identity. That identity will grow in importance and have not just, kind of your brand, but like all the important information about you, your deeds, your ownership things in the metaverse, as well as, your health data and your educational data that really makes a difference. So that's where I see it going, and that data appliance too.
Oh, very revolutionary concepts.
I think so. Yes.
Absolutely. It's just phenomenal to even comprehend the concept of all of this happening in the next few years. And it's definitely possible considering how far we have gone over the course of the past couple of years. The metaverse wasn't really a popular topic not too long ago. But now, it's just absolutely exploded on a global level. It's not just the States and Europe talking about it. You've got the UAE, you've got everyone talking about it. It's fantastic to see all the attention it's generating.
Yeah, governments, right? Like we were in Davos, and Korea, Seoul announced a metaverse for their city, and the World Economic Forum announced a metaverse for the WEF. Yeah, you're seeing it everywhere. We were even looking at mentions of the metaverse in earnings reports. So these are Web 2 companies typically reporting out earnings because most Web 3 and Metaverse companies aren't public yet. So these are Web 2 companies reporting out, and the number of mentions of the Metaverse, had gone up significantly. So I think it's now kind of leveled out, but I thought that was really fascinating, how you're seeing everybody now talk about the Metaverse.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Sandy. That's a wrap for our conversation with the COO of Unstoppable Domains, Sandy Carter. Be sure to stay tuned for weekly updates in the industry and content covering all things Metaverse. Follow the Metaverse Insider on Twitter and LinkedIn, and visit metaverseinsider.tech for all our content. Thank you for joining us, and until next time.